It is strange how years slip by. Sometimes I fancy I never left that narrow street in the artist's quarter. Sometimes I am sure I did. But the sun has faded the ink upon the script, and the shadows in the studio lie across a different wall than they once did. The artist's quarter was full of narrow streets nestled in the old heart of Paris, cloaked in soot and shadow, where art studios nestled above bakeries and the scent of old stone mixed with plaster dust and turpentine. It was a place where time seemed reluctant to pass. My name does not matter now, though once it echoed on the narrow stages of Paris and behind the shuttered doors of a narrow street in the artist's quarter. I was an actor, drawn to shadows and mimicry, a silhouette beside Boris's sculpted brilliance. We were all performers in our way, but I, more than the others, had learned to surrender myself to another's voice, another's soul. Perhaps that is why the mask found me. Or perhaps it had always been waiting, drawn to those who had already practiced losing themselves. Even before I saw it, I felt it like a presence just behind the curtain. It didn't simply appear. It revealed itself as if I had spent my life preparing to wear it. It was in Paris, on a narrow street in the artist's quarter that we lived and worked. Boris, Geneva, and I. There was a fountain there, cracked and lion-faced, always weeping, and the scent of plaster never quite left the air. Boris was a sculptor. He sought beauty with a kind of obsession, a quiet desperation. Geneva was already there when I arrived, quiet, composed, her presence like a fixture in the room. She was Boris's model, his muse, and perhaps more than that, though we never spoke of it. I loved her too, I think, but it was a distant love, held like a breath. The fluid did not simply arrive. It was uncovered, revealed in stages, as though the play itself had unspooled its secrets into our hands. I had received the script long ago, back when I still performed on stage. It arrived anonymously, left in my dressing room after a winter matinee, bound in brittle parchment and inked with strange, slanted glyphs. I kept it hidden for years, unsure whether it was art or madness. But as Boris and I delved deeper into stranger works, symbolist texts, forbidden operas, forgotten rituals, I remembered it. That forgotten script resurfaced in my mind only when Boris discovered a strange symbol, a glyph, nearly identical to the one on its cover, scribbled in the margins of an early translation of The King in Yellow. The memory surged back with violent clarity. I traced the mark through layers of text and footnote, and in a hidden appendix we found it. A description cloaked as verse, too precise to be poetry. A formula not of science but of invocation. We followed its trail. Some ingredients were known, others whispered. One was found folded into a dead bird's wing, another scraped from beneath the varnish of an antique mirror. The final ingredient required us to chip away the mortar from a crypt in the city's grand necropolis at midnight, a fine gray dust that smelled of time and regret. In the end, it came together like fate. The fluid shimmered gold when stirred and thickened in silence. Boris said little, only watched it settle with reverence. I later found a page tucked behind a torn binding, faded, translated badly. It was from the play, from The King in Yellow. The page spoke not of characters, but of rituals, of substance drawn from forgotten veins, of a liquid used to preserve the soul before the fall of truth. The formula was not chemistry, it was scripture. The more I studied it, the more I saw the mask between the lines, described not as artifact, but as consequence. A face born only when the fluid took hold. The fluid preserved what it touched, not deadening but perfecting. Organic forms rendered into silent permanence. Not bronze, not wax, something else. It did not decay, it held life still, just on the edge of breath. We called it the fluid, and we used it. Boris tested it first on animals, birds mostly, a dog. The transformation was sacred, imbued with stillness, as though time itself had stepped back to observe. Limbs arrested mid-motion, feathers stilled in eternal lift. It did not kill, it revealed. Then came the sculptures. Geneva watched the process with eyes I could not read. When Boris asked her to model, she hesitated, just long enough to suggest thought. Then she nodded. "If it reveals truth," she said with a strange resolve, "then let it show mine." He spoke to her gently. The fluid would be safe. It always was. Just a touch, a fingertip first. She stood there in the studio, arms outstretched, the folds of her dress cascading like living marble. The fluid glistened on her skin, then dried. The line between breath and stillness vanished. She smiled, just once, then did not move again. I remember Boris whispering the word, "perfect," and I remember the light in his eyes, soft, mad, divine. I watched her, day after day, the delicate tilt of her neck, the way light caught in her hair, and I saw not Boris's cold perfection, but the ghost of the woman I had loved from a distance, now trapped in a prison of truth. I wondered if she was watching back. I began to see her in dreams, in corridors of dripping gold, beneath skies torn like paper, like the veil of Carcosa itself. Ribbons of aurora suspended in a windless vault, bruised with saffron and gray. In rooms where the mask lay folded on a table, humming. In each dream she turned her head, slowly, and looked at me. Sometimes she spoke, though I never remembered her words upon waking. Her voice shimmered like wind through wires, urgent, reverent, foreign. Once I woke with her name still echoing in my ear, spoken not as a question, but a summons. It was not memory, it was instruction. The mask began appearing in the studio, first as a shimmer in water, then etched in frost, then again in the dust upon the mirror. I found it sketched into the corners of my notebooks, as if drawn by a sleeping hand. I glimpsed its curve in the fall of Geneva's hair, the empty elegance of her smile. It did not emerge, it crept, as if summoned not by sight but by recognition. And always, always, it was watching. I looked at Geneva's frozen form, every line so precise, so impossibly serene. I asked Boris if she still breathed. He only said, "She is finished." Then the dreams bled into waking. The narrow street in the artist's quarter stretched longer than it should. The shadows lengthened at midday. The fountains sobbed. Geneva's statue moved. I saw the yellow sign burned into stone. I traced it in the frost on my window. It moved under my skin. I do not remember the final day, only the mask and laughter and the cold gleam of the fluid as it kissed my skin. But somewhere between the studio and waking silence, I found myself near a shore I did not know. Black water lapping at the edge of a shattered pier. It wasn't water, not truly, but a substance with depthless stillness, as if it drank light rather than reflected it. The moon hung low, sickled and pale, gleaming not upon the lake but within it, its reflection suspended at impossible depths, like a secret kept beneath glass. A soundless fog rose from its surface. Towers shimmered in the distance, impossible spires, crumbling yet still tall, reaching into a colorless sky. "Lake Holly," I whispered. I do not know how I knew, but I did. And from beneath its stillness came a song I had never heard, but had always remembered. I hear strange sounds outside, or maybe it's a dream. Now the studio is quiet, Boris is gone, Geneva remains, and I do not know. The mask is here, and I wear it. Not because I chose to, but because, perhaps, it had already chosen me. I no longer recall the moment it touched my face, only the silence that followed. It is not a mask, not truly. It is a return to what I cannot say. When I speak, the words feel echoed, as though spoken through water. When I dream, I see the others, all wearing faces not their own. It fits too well.
You've reached the end of the signal. If the story held you, stay with us. Like and subscribe, it really does help. There are more corridors ahead, more transmissions waiting to be heard. Thank you for listening.